you know the drill. So as you can see, this session is being recorded and it will be posted on the Health Workforce Collaborative website probably next week. So if other staff didn't get to see it, or your colleagues, you can share that with them. Can you do that, Kelly? Turn on the audio.
I am not sure, but I will try to figure that out.
Okay. So this education training comes to you today from the North Country Care Coordination Collaborative, which is a 30 organization collaborative in the North Country funded through HRSA to focus on using care coordination, care management to improve transitions of care for high-risk individuals leaving the hospital. So early on in the collaborative, we did a survey of frontline care managers in the region about what their priority topics were for staff development. And this topic of sorting out boundaries between care delivery and care coordination was one of the top 4 categories. We know that we must have sort of hit the nail on the head with this. You guys, your feedback was critical because we have over 100 people registered today, and we've had similar, participation in other sessions. So your voice is very important. So today on the call, I'm going to ask that you share in the chat, I think, and we have some breakout sessions. So I think that's critical to this being a success, both for you and for each other. We call these the bag of tricks frontline care manager forums, because what we're trying to do is just sort of build the skill set that care managers have to add to all the wonderful skills you already have, so that you can sort of meet all the challenging situations you always come across every day. So we will be sending an evaluation that'll be coming from Kelly and the AHEC, and I would ask that you would please definitely fill that out. And I'll find that captioning in a minute. If you can just hold on, whoever said that, if you just hold on a minute, we'll get that situated. So what I'd like to do is give this over to Kelly Owens from AHEC to introduce our speaker today. Kelly and her organization have been critical in bringing these trainings to fruition. So thank you, Kelly, and thanks, Amanda, for being here today. And of course, all our participants, we appreciate that.
Thank you very, very much. And I'm really excited to introduce Amanda. We worked with Amanda on several projects, and to tell you a little bit about her. Amanda holds a doctorate in public health with a concentration in community education, and she's currently the Public Health Strategic Planning Director at Healthy Capital District, working directly on activities supporting the upcoming 1115 waiver. Previously, she served as Director of Community-Based Initiatives and Program Support at Whitten Young, which is a federally qualified health center in the Capital Region, overseeing school-based centers and 2 mobile health units. She's also provided training for community health workers, and that's where AHEC, we have worked with her quite a lot related to training for community health workers. And we're happy to turn this over to Amanda for our upcoming training.
Awesome, thank you, Kelly. Hi, everybody, good morning. I'm really excited to be here and to kind of share some tools and tips, and hopefully you'll find some things helpful. So let me just get started. Okay, everyone should be able to see my screen, right, Kelly?
Yes, can see it.
Okay. Okay, so today's presentation is why not? We're going to talk about how healthy boundaries actually support client success. So Kelly gave you a little background about me. I'll just throw in there too. I do have experience and I have a passion for health homes and care management, and the work that you do, I think it's really awesome and amazing and important. So I've worked in a health home before where I've actually done, like home visits and gone out to a variety of places, but also worked in the ER as well as a health home care manager. So have kind of a variety of experience. Additionally, the dissertation that I wrote for my doctorate was actually about health homes and how engaging individuals with mental illness in health homes impacts ER utilization. So that's just kind of my personal connection with health homes, and definitely something that I feel, strongly and passionately about. So thank you all for your work. Just to get started, I just want to do a quick intro. We don't have a ton of time together, but in the chat box, please share your name, your organization, and your spirit animal. So your name, your organization, and your spirit animal. Okay, what's the spirit animal? It is that animal
Sorry,
you feel
what?
that that animal you feel that beautiful connection with. Okay, we got a horse spirit animal. I particularly have to be a walrus. We have a wolf, cat, bear. Ooh, okay. Oh, definitely a phoenix. Oh, a dog. We got tiger. Oh, an eagle. Snapping turtle. That's specific. Panda. Okay. Octopus, cat. A lot of us probably feel like octopus right now, right? With all the things we're managing. Bunny, dog. See, I think I missed a few up there. Elephant, octopus, yep. Cat, dove. Ooh. Okay, we got some more bears. Chameleon, okay. Giraffe. Oh my gosh, you guys are so awesome and interesting. I love that. Okay, we got a rabbit, turtle. First, I didn't make that connection that it was Office for the Aging Turtle. I was like, an aging turtle, okay. Let's see. So thank you very much for sharing, and you can continue to share. Also, you are invited to read the disclaimer at the bottom of the slide. I'm sure it's great information, but you are welcome to do that while we continue to kind of share. Oh, cow, awesome. Okay, so now what if in that chat box, part of that first slide, I also asked you to share your weight. Whoa, right? Your initial reaction might be violence, might be anger, maybe you're uncomfortable, you feel some sort of shame, but also one of the things that we do as care managers all the time is we ask these sort of questions that maybe it's not weight, maybe it is, but maybe it's some things that are a little sensitive to our clients, okay? So sometimes even asking a question can kind of also shape a client's perspective with you while they're kind of gauging, how do I read you and how do I interact with you? So timing is very important, right? We just met and I was like, hey, what's your weight? Also thinking about how that impacts potentially our relationship and your receptiveness to what I have to say going forward. So the reason I just throw this out there is because as care managers, a lot of times you're going to be asking sensitive questions. You're going to be kind of going into some things that may be a little tricky or that may be, shameful or may, get somebody a little worked up. And then when you combine that with boundaries that aren't necessarily always clear or consistent or appropriate, it can really lead to disaster. So my default slide I just wanted to add in here is that really it's your responsibility to know the expectations of your employer. So when it comes down to it, again, I'm going to be providing some tools, but you really need to familiarize yourself with employer expectations. They do differ sometimes across organizations. So for example, in some organizations, it's okay to receive or accept gifts up to a certain amount. We're going to get into a little bit of that more, but it's really your responsibility. And also when you are unclear or you're unsure, you have that little gut feeling, I'm not sure if I can do this or if I should do this, just ask. It's really important. You have supervision. You have that next level to go to. You should have somebody that you can go to and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking, or this is the situation. How do you think I should proceed? Or this is how I was planning to proceed. Give me the thumbs up. Also, if you're unsure or there's something you want to even reference in the future, put it in writing. Put it in writing to a supervisor, put it in writing to corporate compliance. So that way too, you have that in writing and you can again go back and refer to that when you need it. It's also kind of a good backup for you as well too, because that's also like verification of the direction you receive. So worst case scenario, if you receive direction and maybe you misinterpret it, sometimes seeing it in writing is going to help with how to proceed. So those are just my suggestions. You really need to know the expectations of your employer. You need to ask questions and you need to, put things in writing when you want to. So these are some of the common questions we struggle with a lot when we talk about barriers, right? And look at all those below, and we will be talking about a lot of those more in depth today. So I just want to reassure you before we get into some of this is that you do this all the time. So you are no stranger to not only expecting barriers be applied, but applying those boundaries each and every day. As a professional, when we work with clients, we encounter these gray areas all the time where it's necessary to make the right decision. But I want you to understand that you do this all the time and you do a very good job. Every day, again, outside of your professional relationships, I understand it can be tricky when we apply that to those professional areas, but also, again, just knowing you already have those skills to do that. So ultimately, what are you trying to do, right? When we provide care management services, what we're trying to do ultimately is probably support the client in providing for themselves. We want something that's sustainable. If we were to constantly provide for the client, right, number one, pretty expensive. And I don't know if a lot of us could afford that, especially if we're trying to do that consistently across clients. It's not professional. It's not sustainable. That person's going to rely on you all the time now. And that's a heck of a lot of pressure, right? If you are constantly trying to provide for your patients or your clients. So really, again, we want to build that pride, that self-worth, that sustainability, that kind of golden ticket of self-efficacy, where clients really believe in their abilities to do things for themselves. How many people say this? And I say it in that tone because honestly, we all judge people. Perception impacts everyone. Your experiences and your beliefs shape you, and this isn't a bad thing. A lot of times, people are like, I don't judge anyone, I don't judge anyone. You need to, especially as a care manager, you need to be able to judge people in situations because that is healthy and normal. That's contributed to our survival as humans for the longest time. What we need to do is recognize when some of those judgments or perceptions may impact our ability to serve that client, or again, ultimate goal is helping them work towards their self-efficacy. So for example, if you had, our care manager and you're meeting with a new client, if there's somebody that walks into the room, they come in, they sit down across from you, they've got that good body language, they're smiling, nodding, open to what you have to say, you absolutely should judge that situation and react differently to a person that comes in, bursts through the door, slams the door behind them, fist clench, pacing, cursing under their breath. Absolutely, you should be judging those situations differently. So there's going to also be clients that you struggle to work with in general. So this is, again, some of those populations where we need to apply those boundaries. So one of the groups that when we do classes that people really struggle to work with sometimes the most is people that have committed crimes against children. Another group that's kind of tough is sometimes people, if they are involved with any sort of like domestic violence. There's different kind of triggers for different individuals based again on their experiences or their preferences, or even their biases, and that's fine. So know your limits. And when that happens, talk to your supervisor, really seek guidance, okay? So don't be like, oh, I can't stand working with this person because of, what they did or what they told me they did or what I've learned about them. And then you're providing some part care. Talk to your supervisor, work through those things, and really make sure that you communicate, though, when you run across those situations where it may be difficult to work with someone. So here we go. I don't know what to do. I don't have many options, but I really think I need to get an abortion. My parents can't find out, and there's no way I can raise a child by myself. What do you think? You may be presented with this. And if you are, there are some hot topics, okay? So, a lot of times, especially when you're thinking about abortion or, some of those other areas where people, get really, really passionate and heated, know your limitations and what bias you walk into. So sometimes, religion and morality can impact the service that you're providing. So acknowledge and understand the effect of that on your work, do your research. And really, if you cannot, or you're struggling to provide equitable, unbiased service, you need to speak to your supervisor, okay? What you need to not do is you don't want to preach to individuals and say, well, that's really not something I believe in, or let's look at all these other options. This is not even something I want to discuss. So talk to your supervisor. I've come into this a couple of times working with school-based health centers where we have individuals from specific religious groups who really, it's not something they even want to talk about. So what we do is we make sure that they at least know the expectation that if this is something somebody comes to you with, then this is the person that you refer them to, or just pull in the provider and you can step out, whatever it is. Also, gauge their your level of comfort. So maybe the expectation is that you can at very least say, okay, I can't go in depth with you about this, but here's a contact at Planned Parenthood, or they'll be in contact with you. Or again, here's the provider that's going to speak to you a little bit more about that. So there may be, again, some areas where it's kind of a soft spot for us, or it's something that's really, we're passionate about, maybe even personally or outside of work, but just understand that when it comes to those hot topics, know your own limitations, recognize your own bias, but have those conversations with your supervisor. So just a few general tips before we get into a couple more scenarios is your gut instinct is very important, okay? If you have any kind of shadow of a doubt, that's the time you ask. You're like, I'm pretty sure I should do this, or I'm pretty sure this is okay, just ask. You want to be able to stand with confidence behind the decisions that you make. Also, one of the kind of tests you can always do is, what would you think of a coworker if they were to make that decision that you're about to make? Would you be like, even if you're doing that, or you have that little question in your head, again, go and talk to your supervisor, get permission, or get direction on what you need to do. Because then at the very least, you brought somebody in and you have a plan, and you understand why you're making that decision. And maybe you can even talk it out and throw it off of your supervisor or coworker and things like that. But I do recommend, anytime you have that gut feeling, go to your supervisor. So here are some general things to be cautious of. These are things that can really lead to crossing that line with clients. One thing is touching. We're going to talk a little more about that. Terms of endearment, we're going to talk a little more about that. Self-disclosure, Sally. So that's when you are oversharing about yourself and your life. When we are working with clients, we are working with clients for their goals. We are not there to use them as somebody to vent to. They are not our therapists. Also, we shouldn't be sharing about the drama going on with the neighbor next door, anything like that. It's really should be focused on the client. So just be careful sometimes, because we try to make connections, but oversharing can actually be dangerous in crossing that line, where that individual starts to become more involved in your life and also sees you as a friend. On the flip side, when we are over involved in non-work tasks with our clients, that's also something that could be potentially dangerous in terms of appropriate boundaries. So if we're constantly asking them about the drama going on with their friend or their sister or their neighbor, if it doesn't apply to kind of some of the goals, what we're doing is we're getting really kind of involved in them. And again, we're crossing that line, or we're opening the door to say, listen, I'm more than just, this care manager. I'm more than just this professional role. You can consider me a friend. And friends, again, do things outside of professional boundaries. So let's, be careful with that. We're going to talk a little bit about favoritism. We're going to talk about accepting gifts. And also a big no-no, one of the biggest things that I see as an issue is you cannot keep secrets with a client. If you start keeping secrets with a client, don't tell my boss, don't tell my supervisor, I might get in trouble. That's a big deal. And that really opens up the door, again, with you saying we have secrets. This is beyond, again, that professional relationship, and I'm going on a limb with you, so don't get me in trouble. It's just completely inappropriate. So these are the red flags, okay? When you hear a client say any of these things, that's a red flag, and it indicates to you that further discussion is needed. So if somebody says something like, you have no idea how much you mean to me, like I can't do this without you, we really share a special bond, you're such a great friend, maybe we need to have that talk. So that talk could be anything, in terms of specific, or it could be pretty general. What we need to do, though, is be as clear as possible. So if it was something that somebody said, if it was something somebody did, in that case that we just talked about, it would be kind of their expression of how they're feeling towards us. So we want to be clear that this is a professional relationship. I am here for you, but I am here to really work towards those goals with you. I believe in you and we can do this together, but I am a professional and I'm here to really offer this service to you. And also be consistent. So if you are kind of crossing those lines, or you allow other clients to speak to you, you want to address that. And if other clients say things to you like that in front of others, you might want to address it right then and there, so that it's clear that this is not something that is okay, or something that I'm condoning. So you can say things like, it's really not okay to say that, and you can still be professional, you can still be relatable, empathetic, but sometimes just drawing that line, being clear, firm, consistent, it'll squash that behavior right then. If the behavior continues, I say I put the offender, but if it becomes frequent, you really want to describe the impact and just say, we are professionals and we're working together in this capacity. And, I think I really don't want to cross any boundaries. And you can go into, again, more specifics or what your expectations are into how you want to interact. And we're going to, again, get into some of the specifics soon with some of those examples. But you want to demonstrate ongoing professionalism. And that's really the goal, right? You're a professional helping that individual towards their goals. It's not a friendship. But it can be a healthy working relationship. So one of the first scenarios, you have a client that walks up to you, and they say, I don't know what's happening. They say, "What's going on, baby girl?" So we really want to avoid pet names, okay? How cute is that dog? I know, very distracting, I'm sorry. But we want to avoid pet names because one of the things that it does is it creates kind of, this favoritism. So if you're walking up to, if a client walks up to you and they're like, "What's going on, baby girl?" and things like that, or they're like, "Hey, honey, how you doing?" And then you have another client sitting right there. They're like, "Oh, when I walk in, it's like, 'Hey, Janice,' or, 'Hey, Jim.' But, this client walks in, it's like, 'Hey, baby, how you doing?' and stuff." That's going to demonstrate potentially some favoritism. And then that individual is going to say, "Wait, am I getting the same level of service? Or are they really, going out of their way to help me the way they would that client?" So we want to demonstrate consistency across clients. This is also important where if this happens, just address it. The sooner you address it, the better. And also from the outside looking in, that also confuses your relationship with the client to others, okay? So people don't, maybe you're in public, maybe you're at DSS, maybe, you're at a shelter or you're at a food kitchen or wherever it is, and you're advocating for the client or helping them out. And then people are witnessing this interaction. They're going to be like, "Okay, is that their family member? Is that their friends? Is that their neighbor? Oh, that's their care manager." Okay, so we want to, again, understand that we're representing ourselves. We're also representing our organization. So please avoid pet names. And if people start to use some of those terms of endearment, you want to really kind of address it as soon as possible. Another thing is touching. To hug or not to hug. This is kind of, again, a hot topic. Because yes, it can be comforting. It can, be reassuring to clients. Also, some people are going to say, "Well, it's in my culture." And then we also have to be careful, right? Because there's different types of hugs. People are going to give you sometimes or try to give you that full body hug. We're like, "Ooh, a little uncomfortable there. Don't think that was appropriate." So one of the things that, can be confusing sometimes is you have a client that's, breaking down and crying and you want to reassure them. What we can do is try to figure out different skills to use to reassure them verbally. One time when I was in the ER, I had a client that was really, breaking down in front of me and crying, and it was like a really whoa thing. And they were disclosing some trauma and things like that. And what I did was, I gave him a quick little pat on the shoulder is what I did. And that was enough and that was fine. But when we allow hugging and touching, we have to understand that does impact future expectations. So if somebody's upset and we give them a hug, guess next time they're upset, they might be looking for that hug. And then they don't get that hug. And why didn't I get that hug? Oh, do I smell? Is something going on? Do they not like me anymore? So again, you're opening up the door for creating those future expectations. Also, consistency across clients. You're going to hear this a lot from me today. But if you're hugging one client, are you going to hug that other client that maybe, has some poor hygiene? Are you going to hug that client that maybe you're a little concerned about those inappropriate hugs? So you really want to, demonstrate consistency across clients. Let's see. Also, you want to just be careful that, hugs can be misinterpreted by others. So again, what are people seeing from the outside and what are your other clients seeing if you're giving hugs to certain clients and not other clients? And also, are your coworkers going to say, "Why are they hugging everybody?" Is it really necessary for a role? So what it comes down to, and sound like a broken record, is that contributing to the success of the client in meeting their goals? Is that touching and hugging? So this essentially might really promote us to develop some of those skills to be able to reassure clients without touching. And that's great. But if we need to do that, we need to do that. just understand, it really opens up the door whenever we do any sort of hugging or touching and things like that. There's a lot of different ways it can be misconstrued and create expectations that impact your ability to work with that client, and also, some of their self-confidence in working with you. So ask yourself these questions, and honestly, you'll be able to probably make the right decision. So does it really build your relationship when you're hugging them all the time? And in what way does it build your relationship? Is it building it professionally or not? Again, does it create an expectation? And who is it serving? Does it make you feel better to provide comfort by hugging them? Is it making them feel better, or is it both? Also, you also have to be equipped to deflect it. So if you allow that hug, you have to still have those skills to be able to deflect it, in the future if you didn't deflect it now. So you may have to have that conversation, and it might be harder down the line if you've already initiated the touching and allowed that to begin with. Consistency across clients. People have a history of trauma, so maybe you think you're going in for a hug to provide comfort because in your family you are huggers, but for this person, that sort of touch is something that really is inappropriate. I just wanted to quickly backtrack too to the whole cultural thing. So when I was in college, there was a friend of my sister. He would always give kisses on the cheek, and that was something that a lot of people allowed. But for me, I was really uncomfortable with it. So what I would learn to do is, like, when he would try to go and to give me a kiss, I would give him, like a handshake, or I would somehow deflect that. I got pretty creative, especially depending on where I was and who I was around. But after a time or two, he understood that. That was something that if it continued, it was just something, I just want to let you know, I understand that that's something that you're used to. I'm just really not comfortable with it. That's it. Okay. Again, contact, always asking. The end goal of pretty much all those questions you ask yourself should be, does it move a client any closer to their goals? Can I get a ride to my appointment? So care manager cab, that's a lot, again, a lot of expectations, and it's a lot of pressure sometimes, but know your company's expectations. So I do understand that some individuals are authorized or are expected to give rides to their clients, and that's fine. And what I really suggest for you is to be very clear with what the company's expectations are in terms of those rides, in terms of communicating who you are driving where and why you're driving them there. So your company, let's say they authorize you to drive them to the pharmacy, make sure you're not saying, stopping along the way to the grocery store, you're not stopping to pick up this and things like that, because it's really important that you can communicate what those expectations are if that is something you are being asked to do. Also, understand the risks. So, some of your clients might not have great hygiene. There might be smells associated with it. Maybe you're driving them to detox or rehab, and there's, an opportunity for them to potentially get sick in your car. If you're doing it for one, are you doing it for all your clients? This also ties back to company expectations. But again, you taking somebody, a client in your car and driving away, and somebody seeing you with that, and then, well, I just asked you to drive me over here, and you said no. So you should be able to fall back on company expectations if that is something that you do as a part of your job. Also understand the risk for accusations. You are one-on-one in a car with an individual, so it's kind of more personal. And ultimately, we don't want to create a reliance on us. So if we weren't there that day, what would happen? And I totally get there's going to be one-offs, and there's going to be policies that reinforce that you can address those things, but you want to be clear again too with the boundaries. Well, I'm authorized to give you this ride this one time because of this exception, or these are the expectations when you are in my car. These are our company expectations. But ultimately, if you can avoid, I really suggest you avoid that if possible, because I've definitely heard horror stories. I personally never allow anyone in my car for transport, but if that is a company expectation, just really be clear with boundaries and understand the risk. Was it okay that I bought a bag of chips for my client? So I really did this, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, food and buying. So context is extremely important. Okay. So again, questions. Did I create expectations? Did I show favoritism? Is this a secret? Don't tell anyone I bought these for you. Was it costly? Probably not with a bag of chips. Did it impact our relationship professionally? And why did I do it? Like, what was the motivation or the expected outcome? So going into that, I'll tell you a little bit about why my situation and why I bought the bag of chips, okay? So I was working with an individual who was going into rehab at Conifer Park. And it was right before an extremely long weekend. And so they got them in after the long weekend and, said, don't use in the meantime, which, didn't happen. So we get this individual over. I'm sitting in the waiting room with her for probably 5 to 6 hours already at this point. She was getting really kind of antsy and, having a hard time and starting to experience some withdrawal symptoms and being very uncomfortable. So what I did was, we were there, it was quite some time we were there together. We both had not eaten, we were waiting for her to get in. So what I did was I bought a bag of chips for her. So at that time we were able to sit down, she ate the bag of chips, I got myself a bag of chips. We were able to kind of talk some things out. It distracted her though, for the time being. She was ready to get up and leave and it distracted her. And then we took a walk outside and everything was cool. So in that case, right, I say my rehab carrot, there were no expectations created, right? There were also no witnesses. And when I say that, that doesn't always mean that's a good thing, but what in this case, it means I wasn't doing this in front of other clients, right? It wasn't doing anything to be secretive, but I also wasn't doing this in front of other clients saying, oh, well, this client gets a bag of chips, you don't. There were no secrets. It wasn't costly. It really didn't impact our relationship, right? Like she's not going to come to me in a few weeks and be like, hey, can you give me another bag of chips? What it did though, was it did get us to move towards our goal. It kept her in her seat, distracted her from visible symptoms and discomfort, and really ultimately allowed her to accomplish that goal, to stay there, be present, and then get into that rehab. So on the flip side, let's consider a client asks you like, hey, can you give me a bag of chips? Or I'm really hungry, can you give me a bag of chips? Just understand when you do that, you are creating an expectation that you are willing to feed the person. And also sometimes you're creating an expectation that you're willing to do what's asked. A lot of us with big hearts, we wear it right on our sleeves. So people are going to be like, oh, I know I can get a bag of chips out of them, or they kind of, will read you. And maybe it's not manipulative and maybe it's just something that's kind of, they read and that's fine. But just know you're creating an expectation. Also consistency. Are you willing to buy a bag of chips for all your clients?
I do too.
You do? Sorry. If anybody wants to share too, if you want to use the chat box, I think I'm definitely willing to hear more about this. So again, just the consistency piece too, just, be careful because if you're doing that, especially you're doing that in front of other clients, you want to make sure that, you're able to do that for everybody. Also, did you ask somebody not to tell anyone? That's the whole secret piece. Don't do that though. If you're going to buy a bag of chips for someone, you should be able to stand behind it. So like when I bought the bag of chips, I informed my supervisor, hey, when I was there, I bought her a bag of chips, and it was not a big deal. But also this goes back to your company policy. So is that a company policy where that's something that's okay to do? Also, when you do things like that based on somebody just asking you to buy them a bag of chips, that's really something a friend would do. So just be careful because then that's where those expectations can come in. And did you do it for yourself more? Oh, like I want to be nice, have a big heart, because ultimately, is that really working them towards their goals? Maybe it is in the situation, right? Where maybe it's keeping them in their seat, or maybe that's something that's going to keep them coming back or keep them at their appointment. So those are just things to consider, but ultimately, again, company policy is really important as well. Thank you for all your help. I really want you to have this. Open up this card when you get home. It's the least I can do for you. It's all you've done for me. You probably might be hearing this, right? Because it's around the holiday time. So gifts are also accompanied with risk. The biggest thing here is company policy. Like I said earlier, some companies are going to have a policy where you can accept a gift over a certain amount. And other companies are going to say like, hey, hold on, you really need to return that gift, or you're not allowed to accept gifts. Because you also have to consider when you receive a gift, what's attached to that gift? Are there expectations? And now you're going to expedite that application, or you're going to work extra hard to get that client into that program, or anything like that. So just be careful because sometimes those gifts are going to have attachments. Absolutely. Sometimes they might not, right? Sometimes they literally are a display of, this appreciation. And again, your company might allow it based on the amount, but just know that. Also understand, again, consistency across clients. So if a client's giving you a gift in front of another client and the other client doesn't have the means to provide you with a gift, are they going to feel bad about it? Are they going to feel that maybe their service is subpar, all of those types of things, because they weren't able to provide something to you? Or are they going to go out of their way to maybe provide a gift for you at the cost of something else for something they need or something for their family? Cost is important, again, company policy, and also like, does it impact your relationship? So that might be the type of gift, right? So, you know, obviously clients should be giving you like Victoria's Secret gift cards, but they, you know, could potentially be giving you, you know, like a $5 gift card to Starbucks. If that's something that's allowed, that seems appropriate. One of the pieces I didn't like about the scenario was the unexpected piece, right? Open it at home. So you really don't know kind of what you're going to get into in that situation. What I might say is like, you know, we have a company policy about accepting, you know, certain types of gifts or gifts over a certain amount. If it's okay with you, I just want to open it here. And that way I can also thank you in person. That's fine too. So that way, if you have to return it or if it violates policy, you're able to return it right then and there. You don't have to worry about bringing it back in, finding ways to connect with them. Because in the meantime, again, if there were expectations attached with that, those things might continue before you have the next opportunity to connect with them. Oh my gosh, I didn't know you worked here. If you didn't know, on the right, those are little friendship bracelets. So there's always a potential for you to encounter people that, you know, you go way back with, that you've had a previous relationship with. Maybe you were friends. Maybe you grew up together, all of those types of things. Maybe you even had like a previous relationship. When that happens, you should really avoid working directly with them when possible. Understandably so, there are going to be times when maybe it is impossible for you to not work with them. Maybe you've gone to, you know, your supervisor. That's always something you should do, is just talk to your supervisor and make them aware when you know somebody. Step one. But step two is if that's something where you're in a rural community, you know everybody anyways, you need to really clearly set boundaries, okay? So this is the part where self-disclosure Sally says goodbye. We're not gonna, you know, talk to him about a lot of stuff outside of work. We're not gonna talk to him about those non-routine or those non-job tasks during our time, during our care management professional time. You want to be clear with the boundaries. So just want to let you know, I'm going to be actually working with you if that's okay with you. But also, you know, we need to keep this professional. You know, we can definitely, when I see you outside, I'll say hi and things like that. But at work, I just really want to focus on, you know, the goals we're working on together. So acknowledge your role as a professional and acknowledge your role in this, you know, capability in this view, and really stick to it. So if you're saying, you know, I want to keep this relationship professional, but then you go in and start asking about, you know, how's so-and-so been? Have you talked to this person and things like that? That small talk can lead to them saying, oh, actually, we're cool. We can talk about those things at work. This is not necessarily, again, always a bad thing too. So number one, you know, I should have put it on here, I apologize, is talk to your supervisor anytime you already know that individual, because they can also make a determination if it's appropriate. So working in a school-based health center, for example, if, you know, you have we had providers in those school-based health centers, but if a student came in and let's say, you know, their mom was a neighbor to the provider, or somehow they knew that provider in an capacity outside of work, what you would find was we would try to switch them out with another provider, because an individual, let's say, it has an STI, or they're afraid they're pregnant or something. They're not going to go to a provider. They're not going to go to somebody, a lot of times, if they have the option, that they know somehow might get back to their parent or might get back to somebody they know. It really kind of discourages people sometimes from seeking those confidential services or really opening up when they can. Another thing that we used to do a lot in the school-based health centers was we did have staff that worked with students in schools where their child was also a student. So if that parent or if that worker knew somebody, or they had a patient coming in that they knew in any capacity, it's fine. What we would do is we would switch out the medical assistant, and we would make sure that, you know, if it was the provider, if we could switch the provider out, we would do that. But we would also offer, you know, another site, or if they were to come in with an emergency, we would send them straight to the provider, or we would send them straight to the MA to link them to another provider, things like that. Because again, if you are, you know, attached to somebody, it really might discourage people from seeking some of those confidential services that they really need. I don't want to stop working with you. You've helped me so much. And in this case, you really want to keep that client too, right? Because that client is just awesome. They are super pleasant. You have a super difficult caseload, and it would just be great to work with people like this all the time. So one of the really tough things in terms of boundaries that we encounter is when to discharge. So did they achieve their goals? Why are we working with individuals? We're working with them so that they can make progress towards self-efficacy, right? We want them to be able to support themselves. Have you provided all the tools you can? Are they capable now of managing their own health? And we also need to talk about, like, why are you reluctant to discharge them? Okay. Is it you that's reluctant to discharge? Is it them? Do you feel some sort of, connection with them? Or do you feel that, it's going to potentially take away from a relationship, or you're going to be losing a relationship that you value? Whether that's professional, or whether that's something you really connect with that person on a different level, you need to understand that this is a professional environment. So you need to apply the same standards to all their clients. If you were going to discharge this person, that's a little more difficult. Would you be willing to discharge that person that's a little easier to work with at the same time? Because ultimately, when you hang on to clients, it takes away from your ability to help others who may genuinely need it. We're at a point in time where often there's a lot of people waiting to get into services. There's a lot of referrals that are kind of sitting there and things like that. So for us to be able to kind of move along and help people and get them on the right track is awesome. That being said, when you discharge clients, it doesn't, again, depending on company policy, have to be okay, bye, Felicia, like, we're never going to see each other again. It could be something where you're saying, like, you achieved your goals. I'm extremely proud of the progress you've made and things like that. And then you're able to say, here's the office number, or you have my contact information. Please contact me, if something changes, or if you feel that you may need to re-engage with services in the future, or again, whatever that company policy is. But you can always kind of leave an open door, or leave some resources with that individual as well too. And just know, again, this is really in their best interest. I'm not your client anymore. Let me buy you a drink sometime. Oof, oof. Decisions. So number one, they aren't a client anymore. Okay. There's no rules from your employer that you are breaking, technically, right? They're discharged. You're both consenting adults. You know each other on some basis, maybe as well, and you've achieved something together. If they've been discharged, hopefully it's because they've been discharged with success, that they've accomplished some of their goals. But you really have to consider a lot of things, okay? So the relationship really started with one party having authority over others. And I don't mean authority in a bad sense. I mean that you've had tools and resources where you're providing, and this person's really kind of in some way relying or trusting you to provide those resources. So it's something that they're looking for a need in you. So not always necessarily a good start to a relationship. Also, is there a doubt that the shift from the professional relationship to the personal relationship occurred after discharge? If there's any doubt and you said, oh, those last few months, yeah, I can see where that's been building up, be careful. Also, what would happen if the client needs to re-engage in your organization? Is that going to be embarrassing? Is that going to be a big hot mess? All things to consider. And that's very real for some of us too. Like, we've had clients that we've been able to discharge with success, and then to find that they need to re-engage because of life situations and another year or whatever happens. So that's a real thing that might happen and something to consider. Also, what messages to send to other clients? So maybe, you're working with other clients, everything's professional, this client's been discharged. And then a few weeks later, you run into another client and they see you out at the bar with somebody they know you were just working with as a client. So it does send a little bit of a mixed message there, okay? Also, think about those Thanksgiving dinners or those holiday times. Are you embarrassed to introduce them to your friends, family, coworkers? And, when you're asked about your love story, how's that going to feel? Think about that. I'm trying to take the real practical approach without saying, no, don't do it. But also, this I can tell you from experience, revenge is real. And you wouldn't believe it. I've worked with numerous professionals that have lost their careers because of relationships they pursued with people that are considered patients, clients, however you want to do it. And a cautionary tale, there was an individual that I was, working with, super awesome. She ended up having a relationship with a client, and she ended up, moving on and all these things. But what happened was, after, I think it was like 2 years into their relationship, and again, this was after he was discharged, what he did was he actually went to the boards and reported her for the relationship, saying that it started at this time and things like that. And like, you would be like, oh my God, after, 2 years of this, amazing love story, allegedly, people, people get salty. So just be very careful, because there are times where if that relationship ends, and again, sometimes it might be quite some time later, that person or that was the client may actually, have some sort of, revenge motivation to kind of get you in trouble. And that really does happen, as you might not think that initially, but that I've seen that happen, and it is real. They will go after you because of that. So very careful. I think you can tell from based on our conversation how I feel about this. I really don't think that it's something that I would recommend, but think of those things too when you are making those decisions. So this I wanted to just kind of throw in here. This is a home, and I just want to throw in a little bit about home visits and boundaries as well too. So obviously, anytime we talk about home visits, safety is the priority. Okay. So there may have been times when you get up to a person's house and you're just like, oh no, like there's a ton of people outside, or there's a lot of like kind of activity that makes you feel maybe a little uncomfortable, or like something might be going on or happening soon. Maybe you get somewhere and it's kind of like this abandoned building in the middle of nowhere, and you're just like, is this a house? Like, I don't know. You don't want to offend people, but you also don't want to risk it. So you need to draw sometimes those boundaries with yourself to say it's really not worth the risk to me. It's something that I need to prioritize in terms of my safety. And there's polite ways to do that, right? So you can call up the client and just be, I've done that before, where there was a lot of people, like there were probably 15 people hanging out on the porch, and it was a multi-family apartment. But I just gave him a call. I'm like, hey, I'm downstairs. There's just a lot going on. I just want to make sure this is still okay for me to come up. She's like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like, I'll be right down. And she's like, she came down and walked up with me and things like that, and it was fine. Also, there's been situations, one individual I worked with, it was at a high-rise apartment, and there sometimes would be like feuding families or people feuding in the building. So he would actually give me a call sometimes and be like, hey, there's a lot going on right now. I'm coming to your office today. Okay, I don't want you to risk it. But he's also sometimes would be like, okay, there's some stuff going on. I haven't seen anybody out there today. Call me when you get there. And then he would walk me off. So it was just kind of like, a communication about what you feel comfortable with, but also, like what's going on, or, what's more convenient, because things change. Also, your preparation for guests might differ than how guests prepare for you. So if you're going into a home visit, that individual, you might be like, oh, this is, extremely clean in here. So my grandma, you walk into her house, you drop something, you can eat off the floor. She'll insist it's dirty, but it's perfectly clean. It's outrageous. However, you might walk into somebody's house and they picked up, but it doesn't seem like they picked up for you. Just again, be careful with what you say and kind of how you react. Get that poker face on if necessary, because there's different versions of clean. If you were to see my desk at work, you'd be like, oh, I can't even imagine your house. But you go to my house, you're like, okay, like we're cool. So there's different versions of clean, and there's different environments that people, apply different expectations to. Also, one of the big things that always comes up is, do I take off my shoes, and do I sit down or bring a chair with me? So in terms of, again, offending people, boundaries, make sure that, if you do offer to take off your shoes, that you're willing to take them off. And if you're willing to take them off or you're uncomfortable with that, make sure you have socks on, or make sure you even bring a pair of those little like hard bottom slip-ons that you can just throw in your purse. Maybe have a little man purse too, and that's fine, or whatever you bring with you, your bag with your paperwork. And that way you can just, if you do need to take off your shoes, you can just slip those on. If that's something that, that you want to do, because you don't really want to walk around anybody's house, right, with bare feet. Also, understand that, if you are going to bring a chair, just explain that to the clients in a nice way, because people can get offended. Like if somebody brought a chair to my house to sit down, I'd be like, you think it got bed bugs, or you think my furniture is dirty, or yes, you might get a whole, butt full of pet hair, but that's okay. But just make sure that, if you do bring a chair, that you can talk to the client about that in terms of like, I bring this everywhere with me, it's my back, or whatever it is. So just establish safe boundaries that protect you, protect your physical health, but also that, don't impact or don't damage your relationship or ability to connect with the client. Okay, here's another one. So I'm not doing anything until she leaves the room. I don't want her here. Okay, you're working with those kids now. My mom just doesn't get me. So when a caregiver disagrees medically, there's a couple of caveats, right? So legally, it kind of depends. So New York State is interesting in that it allows a little flexibility in terms of, again, we're talking about medical care, because this is something I know you also are maybe involved with, the coordination of that, is in New York State, you need to be mature enough to consent. And a lot of that comes down to the provider. The provider can kind of make that determination. That being said, sexual health decisions or reproductive health decisions, things like Plan B, things like STI testing, even HIV testing, treatment, things like that. That is actually something that minors can consent to themselves. Mental health care, sexual assault treatment, and certain substance use disorder services. So those are kind of, I mean, some of that stuff's kind of rare. However, if a provider determines that this individual needs these services and the parents are like, nope, they don't need that, or I'm not consenting to that, there are situations too where the provider can say like, we're doing that. But interestingly, again, my work in the school-based health centers and on the mobile unit, we would see minors a lot of times that would come to us and be like, okay, like I want to get tested, or I need a pregnancy test, or I want to find out if I have this STD, or this is what the symptoms I'm experiencing. And as medical professionals, they can see those individuals, they can treat those individuals. And then there's just kind of some back end work that they do in terms of making sure that doesn't get billed to the insurance, and then it gets billed appropriately, or it's a write-off kind of thing. And interesting in New York State, though, if you're working with a minor and they want a vaccine, they cannot consent to their own vaccines except HPV, because it's related to reproductive health. Okay. So one of the things that I found extremely frustrating was when working in the school-based health centers, we would have kids sometimes that would come in and be like, I want my COVID vaccine. Well, we couldn't give them their COVID vaccine. And some of these kids were seniors and now they couldn't play football their senior year. They couldn't play their sports because it's required by the school, but their families would not consent to those vaccines. That's something we've talked to the state, the county about too. And it gets, that's just what it is. It is what it is. So what we would always try to do is really get parents on board. Really, that's the ideal state. And honestly, it is a skill that can be developed. So some of the work that we were doing in the schools, we had like pretty much 100% success rate in getting parents on board with whatever it is that we needed them to do. So a lot of times that came down to birth control. So, for all of you that may not know a lot about birth control, there's other things that come along with that, benefits that come along with the birth control, and other benefits that, may be associated with that individual's health. So we can talk about, the regulation of the menstrual cycle and the symptoms and all these different things that it may help. And maybe that's the reason that we, promote when we talk to the parents about birth control. So they don't automatically think, oh, my kid just wants to do this so they can go have sex with everybody and anybody. So there are ways, there are tactics you can use to get parents on board. That's always the ideal state. Worked with individuals before where they're actually kind of living and going to school across the state from their parent, and their parent essentially has nothing to do with them or doesn't want to have anything to do with them. We've called the parent before, and the parent has said, I don't care what you do with them, do whatever you want. They won't give us specific permission, but they pretty much give us that blanket permission, and they make it clear that this is just something that we're not even involved with or dealing with. So in those cases, sometimes emancipation may be warranted if it's not already something that's existing for that individual. And in those cases, you can link them to legal aid, but they are able to get the treatments they need, or they all are able to get those health services outside of what they're able to consent to themselves. But obviously getting parents on board, and keep going back to that. So you can be a really good bridge. You can mediate and identify appropriate resources whenever you can. But the big thing is you really might want to consult with compliance or legal, because you also might have certain policies that support your work in certain areas, or there also might be kind of creative ways around certain things as well too. Now, if you're in a care management session and there's a kid that's just like, I want mom out, sometimes the mom, technically can be here, but if you're smart about it, what we would do is you can divide and conquer. You can even, if you can get another coworker in the room, that'd be great. You can even have them in the same room and say, listen, I just have a few questions I want to talk to you about what's going on, because it sounds like there's some stuff going on between you. So that way that individual has the opportunity to speak with you privately. And then there's always obviously like different scenarios. So if you're operating in a school-based health center, kind of kids have more ability to come to you and seek out certain services confidentially. So and when in doubt too, you can always go to legal, because sometimes they can also get pretty creative in how you can handle situations, especially if there's ongoing confrontation or conflict with parents. Oh, can I get your number? I don't know what I'll do this weekend if I can't reach you. Cell phones and after-hour connectivity. This is tough, right? Cell phones, personal cell should not be provided to patients. You want to provide clients with clear boundaries about availability. And one of the things that you do is, put, if you want, if you need to, if you think it's beneficial, you can put your hours on and days on your business card, and that's fine too. But you always either way want to provide a backup general number. You all work hard, you all deserve days off, and you all deserve that time off to be peaceful, if that's what you decide. So it's important that clients don't rely on you or understand that you are not available 24/7. You are a human. We're not asking them to be available to you 24/7, right? So we need to understand that there are professional boundaries with this. There are clients you might work with that struggle with mental health, suicide ideation. There are 24/7 resources for this, and it's really important that we encourage people to use that. So let's say, you do what I say don't do, and you give them your cell number because they say, oh, I'm really feeling I might hurt myself. And, you're the only person I want to talk to. You give them your number, but now you were sleeping, or now you were maybe in the bathroom or something. You weren't able to answer your phone. It was on silent, whatever, your phone died. Is that going to be on you? Like, how are you going to feel? Because now that person doesn't have any sort of backup resources, right? They were relying on you, and you've assumed kind of all that responsibility. So what I always do is, if you're working with individuals in those situations, have them put in their phone the suicide prevention, the crisis line. There's a lot of different 24/7 resources. Maybe they're minors too. Maybe they feel more comfortable texting. Get them started with those type of things. Or maybe your office is open 24/7, or you have somebody at your desk, and that's fine. You can provide that information to them too. But what you don't want to do is ever have anybody rely on you 24/7, or for you to feel like you have to be available 24/7 with somebody. That is so much pressure. And even with the best intentions, I don't know about you, but there are times when I cannot answer my phone throughout the day, and there's really no way around that. So remember your goal. It's supporting client self-efficacy. We can't be everything for everybody. It's just impossible. Oh, okay. You know what this is? Lovely phones. This is for me a big no. Don't let clients follow you on any social media. Please do not do that. Do not like their photos. Do not comment on their posts, because what we're doing is we are crossing those lines. You need to be very weary about this. People have lost their jobs over this. I've seen multiple people lose their jobs because of things that have occurred online. And guess what? Where there's a will, there's a way. So if there's a client, then maybe they're like asking the friend request you and things like that, don't do it. Don't leave your phone out in front of them, because I've had situations where clients have taken the phone of somebody that's left their phone out, and they've added themselves on their Snapchat or whatever it is. And then that turns into an issue because they're following them. Now they know some things, they know what's going on. Be very weary about what you post, and be wary about accepting friend requests, because people are smart. They will create those fake profiles. They will catfish you. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, where my kid goes to school, all of these things. Be very careful. Also, things that you post generally, if you're doing live streams or you're posting things generally on Snapchat where everyone can see, just know your clients may be seeing those things too. Okay. And when people are determined, they will find a way. So just be very careful with social media. I've seen this come back to bite people numerous times. Let's see, what are your thoughts about communicating? Great question, Michelle, about Facebook Messenger. I personally don't really agree with that at all. I will say what we've done in the past, we had one family that would only communicate via Facebook Messenger with, and what we did was we actually defaulted that. The school was already communicating with them, so we were kind of using the school to communicate with them, but we drew the boundary in terms of that's not something that we use to communicate. Is there a way that we can email, that we can call you at a certain day and time? So what we did was you can provide options within what your company's expectations are. But on Facebook Messenger, be very careful, because people do sometimes get under the influence and they will send you inappropriate messages, or they will, when they're under the influence on a weekend after hours, and then you had a whole situation to deal with, and you're not working with that individual But again, you're just opening the door for them to kind of know you on a more personal basis outside of those professional boundaries. So just be careful. For me, social media is a big no. And I really want to instill, if I can, anything, a little sense of paranoia about everybody when using social media. Another thing, we're kind of, I guess we're not even close to lunch, but I guess just always hungry. This would be more of Uber, DoorDash, and care managers. So during the pandemic, things happened, right? Like, so there may have been times through your organization where you were dropping off food and items to clients. Certain things during a global pandemic or a global crisis might be necessary, but the problem is some of our clients may have gotten used to those provisions. They're like, oh, hey, like, can you go drop off my groceries? Or, oh, I'm not really feeling like it today, or I don't really have, transportation. Can you go pick this up for me? So you got to think back, okay? It's tough sometimes, right? When we cross lines and then we have to go back, but we do need to draw those lines out. So why were we initially providing this food? It was literally because there were people that were on quarantine that weren't going to get food in any other way. We were having shortages and people being able to deliver that food. Counties were overwhelmed, people were overwhelmed. So things have changed. That being said, we have to be clear about those changes in roles and why they changed. So you might have to have that conversation with a client and say, this is something that we were allowed to do because we were, in a global emergency. We had a national emergency. And so we had provisions that we were allowed to do that are outside of our role. But I do want to let you know, this is something we can no longer provide. Also, I'm working with you because I want to make sure that, if I'm not around or if, our office is closed for a few days, that you're able to get the food and the things you need. So the goal, again, is self-efficacy. If we are providing, costly, a lot of pressure, but we're not creating a system where people can provide for themselves. We're creating a system where people are starting to rely on us, and that's really dangerous and counterproductive to what we want to accomplish with clients. Oh, okay, get ready for those breakout rooms here. Take a look at this. Sorry about that voicemail I left you this weekend. Please don't say anything to anyone. I was drunk. I didn't mean to call you and say those things. Let's just forget about it. Uh-oh. So I'm going to give you a little context and then we're going to get into breakout rooms. So consider. Okay, so number one, I'm going to give you a couple little more situational facts here so you can talk with your group and make some good decisions. The client's on parole. So maybe they're on contingency management, which means essentially that they have some sobriety requirements attached to their parole. This was their first slip up that you're aware of. The client did say some pretty inappropriate things about the way you looked and their feelings towards you. So there's that. The client is asking you to keep a secret. Right? Don't tell anyone about that call. Let's just forget about it. We also know, though, as professionals, a relapse can be considered part of the recovery process. So this happens, right? But also we know that this relationship has changed. At some point, this client even thought to send you that message and say those things. So there's something going on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to send you to breakout rooms, and then with your group, I want you to discuss, number one, what would you do? How would you handle this situation? And also maybe what would you say to that client? So the client, again, is saying, sorry about that voicemail I left you this weekend. Please don't say anything to anyone. I was drunk. I didn't mean to call you and say those things, and let's just forget about it. So again, you're going to go into your groups. I'm going to give you about probably 10 minutes. Talk in your group. Number one, I want to hear from you, and we'll share this too, about what you would do if there's anything you would do. And then I also want to hear how you would communicate with the client as a follow-up to this, to their question about not telling anybody. So let me just stop the share. You will all be invited into breakout rooms. Let me just. And okay, you will receive an invitation, and then after about 10 minutes, I'll give you guys some warnings of when we're going to bring everybody back. Then you'll have 30 seconds. 60 seconds. You'll automatically be brought back to the main. We will share, and then we will move on from there. So you should all be receiving invitations now to join your breakout room. So please join. And I'll make sure we have at least a few people in each room. And then if I need to move people around, I will. You have should have about 6 people-ish in your room, max. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we have 8 people that haven't joined the breakout room, but otherwise, that's great. Every room has a good amount of people in it.
Amanda, should we go in and out of the room?
You absolutely can. You have the option to join it, right?
Yeah, it came up, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know
I'm
where
just
it is now, however. Wait, oh, here it is, I got it, yes. Now the people that are left, what does that mean? Why are they left there?
So they probably stepped away from their computer or something like that. You
I
just
see.
haven't clicked the join button.
Oh, I see, I see. So you few people that are in the room that are hearing Amanda and I, are you in the room? And if you are, you can just click on accept or join the breakout room and move into a room. If you're not near your computer, then you're probably not going to do that, but
I think we have about 6 or 7 people that have
yeah,
joined.
because the 3 of us, yeah.
Awesome. That's pretty good.
If anybody
Yeah.
has questions, that's hasn't joined a breakout room, just speak up and we'll unmute and we'll tell you what to do. It's a lot of people though, so that's not bad.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know people join pretty quickly too, which is great. Sometimes there's a little lag.
I think everybody's used to it by now, right?
Yeah, I'm probably good. Probably like 7 minutes. We have time to share.
So far, so good. Nice job, Amanda.
Yay, thanks. It's like hard because there's so many things.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
There's just so many things I want to cram in. Like, okay.
I don't know. I can't hear you anymore.
Oh no.
Oh, now I can. I don't
Not
know.
now?
Yeah, it was just when your head was turned. I couldn't hear those things you just
Oh
said.
shoot. Okay. See.
That didn't happen at all during the
Oh, good.
not at all during the conversation. Just right then. I don't know why.
Oh, good. Let's see. Sign in, sign out. There's somebody that just logged out and rejoined, so I just assigned them to a breakout room.
Oh, okay.
So that worked out. Okay, that works.
Is it weird to jump into one?
No, I don't think so. So if you want to jump into one, I'd probably suggest either room 9. Well, room 9 probably, because they only have 3. There's 2 people that didn't join in that group, and all the other ones have like at least 4, if not 6.
Oh, I see. Because they didn't join the other 2 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'll join.
Are you going to join 9? I don't want to both join the same
No,
one.
no, I'll join 10 then. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're just going to give a minute or so. Everyone's received the invitation to rejoin the session, so I'm just going to wait till everybody rejoins. In about 30 seconds, everybody will rejoin regardless. So. Okay, it looks like everyone's rejoining us. We're just waiting for the last couple of people in the next 5 seconds that'll be kicked out anyways and have to rejoin us. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for your participation. I just wanted to, I just wanted to see, kind of hear a little bit about anybody that wants to share. If you can type it in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself, what your group kind of talked about, or what you guys decided would be kind of the best course of action in terms of what you might do, and also what you might say to that client. So it looks like in the chat box, we already had one response saying that reporting it to a supervisor would be something that they would do, which is very important. And I think a great response in terms of what you would do. Absolutely. Thank you, Rochelle. I think it was group 2 that I joined. You guys had some pretty good discussion. Does anybody from your group want to share maybe kind of what you said you would do? Looks like Stephanie shared, switch them to a new care manager. Okay. Confirming boundaries was crossed. Okay. And what is expected in future professional relationship? Okay. So if you will continue a relationship, it needs to be very clear. Again, reporting to a supervisor would be great. Michaela said, our group talked a lot about involving a supervisor and making sure you know how your company wants to address it if there are protocols. That is perfect. Again, when you involve a supervisor, what you're doing is also protecting yourself, but you're making sure you're doing the right thing, and what you're doing is consistent with the company policy. One of the most beautiful things, right, is to be able to say that you have a supervisor, or to be able to say, like, listen, you know, based on company policy, this is what we need to do, or this is how we're going to proceed. It's great to be able to fall back on a policy that really protects you and your job and your professionalism. Document. That's great as well, too. Also, so start with supervisor and can also discuss rights and responsibility the client has signed. Okay, so sometimes you print those and go over them with them as a reminder. So I think that's wonderful too. You might need to revisit those. And also our group discussed the same solutions. Okay, so talks a lot about involving a supervisor and things like that. So you really, again, the way that you interact with the client from there is you do need to specifically say that the line was crossed, okay? What you don't want to do is respond and just be like, oh, it's okay, like forgotten, you know, because you don't want to deal with it. Maybe you don't want to deal with it. It's a lot. You got to talk to your supervisor. It's embarrassing, all those things, especially some of the things maybe they said. But you really need to identify that you are aware that a line has been crossed. Stephanie said, we also discussed addressing it firmly with the client and potentially telling the parole officer, right? So that's a tough one too. And that might be something you even want to get guidance on with your supervisor as well too. But you are an advocate, right? So if you are working on the client self-efficacy, maybe you can report it to the parole officer, but maybe you have a relationship with the parole officer, or you can advocate to the parole officer and saying, listen, relapse is part of this process. What can we do to make this right? Or, you know, if he or she engages in treatment, or what are these conditions? What are some things that this person's willing to work on? Again, having that conversation with the client though, and being like, okay, well, you know, I really do, based on our company policy, I need to, you know, communicate this to your parole officer, but I want to let you know that I understand that this was a slip up, or that, you know, relapses were part of the recovery process sometimes. And what I want to do is support you into making sure that doesn't happen, or to making sure that you do have the tools necessary to maintain your sobriety. So what are you willing to do? And then again, coming together with the parole officer, that's an option. We discussed the boundaries and clarification of that, and if the individual can follow those lines in the future. Also, we do not need to keep secrets. That means we would call parole. However, if asked, we do not lie. Okay, awesome, great. And you can continue. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I didn't say anything, but I just unclicked. But sometimes it's difficult for me because I look at my role as a care manager, and this is Lori Bishop from the Mental Health Association.
Okay.
I look at my role as that I'm there to advocate for their needs. So I'm not an advocate for parole. So, you know, the
Right.
thing I would clearly say to the individual is I'm not going to call parole per se on you. However, we do not keep secrets. And if parole asks me if I'm aware that this person has had a relapse, at that
Okay.
point, I would tell the truth. And then you can, you know, advocate about that being part of the process. But, you know, I always align myself first and foremost with the client and what they're asking for in services. Again, I guess if it's a mandated service, which is only through the AOT program, it's not through parole, we're not mandated. You know, look at ways to try to help that individual be successful, but not necessarily throw them under the bus.
Okay. No, and that's understandable too, because depending right on your relationship, you may have active communication with parole and you may not have active communication with parole. But I 100% agree with you. If you're asked, it's not a secret you should keep.
Right. Yeah. Never lie. Don't keep secrets. That perpetuates, you know, unhealthy relationships anywhere in life, not just at work.
Perfectly said, Lori. Thank you so much. Oh, love that. So thank you all. I think you all, you know, have a really good head on your shoulders and everything you said made sense. So good job. So, you know, again, we will have to have those talks sometimes with clients where you're going to have to talk about your role. So what I just want to say is when you do have those talks, just make sure you know what your expectations are, what you're trying to achieve. Keep that in mind always. And also like be able to explain why. So if the client has questions about like, well, why can't you do this or whatever, know your company's policies or ask questions. Maybe it's direction that you've received from a supervisor because of something that's happened in the past and it's really there to protect you. Maybe you don't have to go into all that, but you should be able to at least give a why if asked. Also, again, be firm, be consistent. People notice things when you are inconsistent with clients and it creates that atmosphere of favoritism and things like that, or I'm not good enough, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do with people. Also, you want to align always with employers' policies and expectations. And if you don't know, ask. If you aren't sure or it's not written in a policy, talk to your supervisor. You may want to talk to compliance or legal. That your supervisor can provide you direction on where to go with that. Sometimes it might even be HR. Ask your supervisor for guidance always and request additional support when you're needed. Sometimes it might be a physical presence. Where you're saying like to the supervisor, you know, I'm kind of feeling like there's something going on or there's something weird, you know, when I interact with this client. I don't know if it's just me or would you be able to sit in, or maybe there's a safety concern, or maybe, you know, they continue to call you that pet name that you're like, please stop calling me sweet cheeks every time you see me, and they just keep doing it. That might be a time where you're saying, hey, can you join us for our next meeting? And then your supervisor can provide that direct support to address it and to say, listen, I know that your care managers talked to you about this a couple of times, and I just want to let you know as a company, this isn't something we find acceptable. That might be where you pull out some of those assigned agreements that you had mentioned in the chat box before too, and just kind of reinforce each other and let them know we're all here as professionals, we're here for you, but there are expectations. So quick recap. Trust yourself, trust your instincts, okay? Ask for help when it's needed. Also, evaluate your decision with common sense questions. Again, you apply boundaries all the time. So when you start to get all nervous and panic and things like that, just know you do this all the time on the regular. And also, you have people that you can ask for help. Remember that your relationship with the client in this capacity in your role is professional. So if it's not professional or it's not something that you think would kind of highlight your abilities within your career field, then don't do it, or again, seek guidance. And clients can experience more success when you set healthy boundaries. We hear this a lot with kids too. If the kids have healthy boundaries, they have expectations, they have things they can work towards, it really is setting them up for success, right? Long term, they're going to be able to do things for themselves, and they're going to have a lot of pride when they do hit those accomplishments, as opposed to we did something, they did something, we were able to support that, but they did that for themselves. So I really just want to thank everybody. I want to thank North Country Care Coordination Collaborative and also Hudson Mohawk AHEC. And at this point, if you have any questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself, or you're welcome to share anything you'd like in the chat box.
Amanda, I would like to thank you. This is Lori Bishop again for giving like a real time, real life presentation. You know, it was terrific that you walked this walk, and so that you could bring your own experiences to share with others. And I think that that's invaluable. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Lori. Sometimes those experiences have been good and bad, but we take it and we learn from it, right?
Exactly.
Amanda, Dana Corin is asking if you'll be available after to hang. I don't, Dana, do you mean to hang on the phone, or do you want Amanda to contact you? Wasn't sure.
Oh, the recording. You have it recorded, correct?
Yes, the recording will be up on the Health Workforce Collaborative website next week. So what Kelly will do is send out an email with that link after the fact. You also receive the evaluation, so if you would please fill that out. Yeah, Dana, yeah, that's the idea, because you know, a whole department can't necessarily just step away and do this. So we're trying to make it. There are other presentations on that website as well. So if you haven't received the others, there's some good presentations on de-escalation, you know, de-escalating a client in crisis, also burnout and vicarious trauma. So there's lots of options. The evaluation is up there, and it'll also be emailed to you. Thank you guys so much. Amanda, fabulous. Thank you. I appreciate your time today and your experience, which does bring, you know, more credibility to the whole conversation. So we thank you, and you guys have a great day and enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you in the new year, which is so weird to say. December flew by, right? Kelly, anything else?
No, I think that's it. Sorry for the delay in getting the evaluation up. It's in the chat right now, but as Mary mentioned, I will send out an email to everyone who participated with the evaluation link, and the update will be shared when the recording is available as well.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Take care.
Happy
Thank you,
holidays,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, everyone.